The Dominion fleet drifted like predators above the abandoned colony, hulls gleaming with the cold light of a distant sun. Admiral Caliph stood upon the bridge of his flagship, mandibles flexing with practiced boredom as he watched human transports burn in the void. The outpost had offered resistance for barely an hour, enough to amuse his gunners, not enough to warrant recording. Around him, his officers murmured in tones equal parts contempt and routine, as though this slaughter were nothing more than sweeping aside insects. "Primitive," sneered one lieutenant, her eyes narrowing as wreckage spun past their viewport. "They scatter without coordination. Do they even understand fleet doctrine?" Caliph's mandibles curved into a thin smile. "They understand fear. That is enough. Fear is the Dominion's oldest ally." He spoke it with conviction, though he could not ignore the unsettling composure of the humans below. They had surrendered too quickly, too quietly, as though the outcome had been anticipated. He dismissed the thought. Fear wore many masks. On the surface of the planet, Dominion troops herded prisoners into containment pens. The humans walked without protest, no begging, no thrashing. They stared forward, eyes steady, jaws set. A Dominion commander broadcast footage of the captives to the bridge. "Strange herd, Admiral. Not broken, not trembling." Caliph leaned closer to the display. The prisoner's silence felt less like submission and more like judgment. He found himself irritated by their restraint. It matters little. Whether they whimper or not, their fate remains the same. Another world claimed, another rung upon the ladder of our empire. His tone was final, though something within him itched at the edges of his certainty. The campaign was routine. Push deeper into the spiral arm, harvest resources, break the locals, and expand the Dominion's perimeter. Yet humans had appeared only recently on their maps, an anomaly dwelling at the very rim of the galaxy, tucked into forgotten sectors where no great power had reason to look. Caliph had assumed they were latecomers, barely out of their stone huts. Their crude plasma cannons and fragile orbital stations seemed to confirm it. But when the colony's defense grid had activated, the batteries had not fired wildly as most primitives did. They had targeted specific Dominion supply ships, crippling logistics before frontline craft. Too precise to be chance. Caliph had brushed it off as luck. Still, the thought lingered, gnawing. He shook it away as the fleet prepared to advance toward a brighter prize. Reports had located the humans' home system, blue planet, dense with population, rich in minerals and industry. It would be the jewel of this campaign, an anchor world for Dominion expansion. His second-in-command, Commander Varix, approached with a data slate and a smirk that exposed gleaming fangs. "Our scouts confirm the humans call it Earth. A fitting name for soil soon beneath our claws. The resistance there is expected to be symbolic at best." Caliph accepted the slate, scanning orbital layouts, troop estimates, and intercepted transmissions. Nothing unusual, nothing that suggested true danger. And yet, why did his claws tighten on the device? Why did the calm eyes of the captured prisoners return to him in memory? "Do not underestimate symbolic resistance," Caliph said at last, his voice colder than he intended. "The smallest ember can ignite a blaze if allowed air." Varix laughed. "Admiral, we command firestorms. What ember dares oppose us?" Caliph allowed the laugh, even joined it with a hollow chuckle, but the unease did not leave. He turned to the viewport, watching the blackness of space stretch beyond the fleet. Somewhere in that darkness lay Earth. Somewhere within those oceans and forests and cities, millions waited. If they were like the prisoners, unyielding, patient, then perhaps this conquest would not be as clean as his officers imagined. When the fleet breached Sol System weeks later, the Dominion expected chaos. Instead, silence greeted them. Human channels broadcast static, planetary defenses powered quietly, and the skies above Earth shimmered with shields that had not been recorded in prior intelligence. Caliph frowned as tactical readouts scrolled across his command deck. "No panic transmissions?" he asked. "None, Admiral," replied his comms officer. "Only automated signals repeating coordinates like invitations." Invitations. The word scraped at Caliph's thoughts like a blade. He gave the order to test the defenses. Squadrons of Dominion craft darted forward, unleashing fire upon orbital platforms. The response was not frantic. It was deliberate. Human cannons answered with startling accuracy, severing wings of ships in surgical bursts. A Dominion destroyer disintegrated in silence, its debris scattering across the void. The bridge tensed. Caliph leaned forward, mandibles flexing. How did they? Varix barked a laugh, forcing bravado. Blind luck. 1 shot in 1,000 lands true. But was not 1 shot. It was many. The humans did not flood the sky with panic fire. They waited, aimed, and struck where it mattered. Supply vessels, ammunition barges, communications relays. Each kill precise, as though they had studied Dominion doctrine. Calith's unease deepened into recognition. This was no blind resistance. This was calculation. A voice cut across open channels, calm and steady, unmistakably human. You have taken what was never yours. You have spilled blood you do not understand. Leave now, and you may live to see another sunrise. Every officer on the bridge turned as the transmission ended, silence falling heavier than any gunfire. The words had not been shouted, not wrapped in threats or rage. They were spoken like fact. Varix snarled. How dare they issue demands to us? Calith stared at the stars beyond, his unease sharpening into something colder. He remembered the eyes of the prisoners, the measured silence. He realized, with a dread he refused to voice aloud, that perhaps the humans had never been the prey. Prepare the fleet, he ordered, voice low, steady. This will not be as simple as we thought. And though his officers still chuckled, still scoffed, Calith's claws dug deep into the armrest of his command chair, as if holding on against an unseen current, pulling the Dominion towards something vast and terrible waiting in the dark. The council chamber of the Dominion glowed with the pale light of 100 star maps. Admirals and ministers reclined on thrones of obsidian, their voices dripping with the arrogance of creatures who had never truly known defeat. The reports of the engagement at Earth's perimeter flickered across displays, ships lost in numbers that should have been impossible against a species so young. Yet the lords of the Dominion waved it away, blaming chance, blaming incompetence, blaming anything but the possibility that humans were more than prey. Admiral Calith stood at the chamber's center, his scaled hands clasped behind his back, his voice measured though unease pressed hard at his chest. This was no accident. They struck supply ships first, then relays, then the destroyers assigned to screen. That is doctrine. They knew us. They studied us. Laughter rippled through the chamber. A minister hissed through sharpened teeth. Studied us. A race barely out of its cradle cannot possibly. They can, Calith interrupted, louder than decorum permitted. His voice echoed like a blade drawn in silence. And they have. We did not find them by chance. They lured us. Those colonies we took so easily, they were bait. The laughter faltered. Some shifted in their seats. Others narrowed their eyes with contempt. A rival admiral flicked his tail in dismissal. You insult the Dominion by suggesting primitives could outthink us. Calith met his gaze. I do not suggest. I report. Every maneuver, every exchange, they fought as though each step had been calculated years in advance. They broadcast to us not in desperation but certainty. I tell you plainly, they were ready for us. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. For a heartbeat, Calith thought he had broken through. But then the council's prime voice leaned forward, the glow of the star maps shimmering across his ancient crest. You are rattled, Calith. You lost ships and now seek to mask weakness with tales of phantom threats. Humanity will break as all have before. Their numbers, their machines, their resolve, it is dust before the storm. The chamber murmured agreement, eager to restore the illusion of control. Calith bowed his head with ritual obedience, but inside, fear gnawed deeper. The council was blind, and blindness would doom them all. When he returned to his flagship, the bridge crew watched him with wary eyes. Discipline held, yet beneath it he sensed their questions, their doubts. Varix met him in the corridor, voice low, mocking. You spoke boldly, Admiral. They will call you alarmist now. Perhaps even coward. Calith halted, his mandibles tightening. Better a coward who warns than a fool who dies unknowing. Varix smirked, spoken like one who doubts victory. Are these humans truly so dangerous? I saw their world, crowded, loud, unrefined. They are creatures of dirt and water. Calith's claws clicked against the floor. And yet they fight with precision no dirt-born species should wield. I have looked into their eyes, Varix. They do not tremble as others do. They wait. He lowered his voice further. They remind me of hunters, not prey. Varix said nothing more, but unease flickered across his expression before he concealed it with bravado. That night, Calith stood alone in the darkened war room, replaying capture transmissions. Human voices, firm and calm, warning with the certainty of those who had endured worse. He called up stolen fragments of history, pieced from their networks. Battles waged not against aliens, but against themselves, wars of trenches and fire, cities reduced to ash, oceans scarred by weapons that boiled seas. He watched human faces staring into death without surrender. He whispered to the empty room, "If they fight each other like this, what will they do to us?" The next day, the Dominion Armada advanced deeper into Sol. The humans did not retreat. Instead, new fleets appeared from nowhere, wormhole signatures flaring like phantom storms. They did not roar or proclaim. They simply moved with unshakable intent, hemming the Dominion's advance, striking not for glory, but to dismantle piece by piece. Caliph observed in silence as another squadron vanished from his tactical screen. His officers cursed, demanded retaliation, but he felt something else rising in his chest: recognition. This was not the chaos of prey animals flailing against predators. This was war as he had never seen, efficient, patient, merciless, without anger. On an open channel, the humans spoke again. "Withdraw. This is your last warning." Their tone carried no triumph, no desperation. It carried inevitability. Caliph stared at the transmission until the signal cut, his reflection dark against the screen. Around him, his crew seethed with wounded pride, their voices demanding vengeance. Yet all Caliph could hear was silence, the silence of a trap already sprung, of a war the Dominion had walked into with blind arrogance. He gave no orders to withdraw. His pride, his duty, his fear of the Council's scorn held his tongue. But within, he felt the first fracture of certainty. Humanity was not breaking. Humanity was revealing. And the Dominion, for the first time in centuries, stood at the edge of a storm it did not command. Admiral Caliph had always thought silence a comfort, the natural order of command. Yet now, standing in his private quarters with only the glow of human data feeds across the walls, silence pressed upon him like a weight. The Dominion had intercepted thousands of hours of Earth's history, and he had demanded to see it all. At first, he expected crude myths and tribal skirmishes. Instead, he saw empires rise and fall in fire, armies clashing in numbers greater than most galactic wars, entire nations driven to annihilation by their own kind. The humans fought with a fury that bordered on obsession, and when victory eluded them, they burned themselves and their enemies alike. Caliph leaned forward as a recording showed soldiers in trenches, mud and blood indistinguishable, men and women charging through fire with weapons too primitive to be effective, yet still they charged. Another reel showed mushroom clouds blooming above shattered cities, the sky itself darkened by their ambition to destroy. He muted the audio, but he could still imagine the screams. His claws trembled against the edge of the console. Commander Varix entered without knocking, his posture confident, though the faint quiver in his crest betrayed unease. "Still drowning yourself in their savagery? You'll drive yourself to madness." Caliph did not look away from the screens. "Do you see them, Varix? They slaughter their own as though extinction were preferable to surrender. They do not fear death. They court it." Varix snorted. "So they are reckless. What of it? Recklessness is no match for an empire." "No," Caliph said, his voice flat, "it is not recklessness. It is discipline honed by chaos. They do not merely endure war. They become sharper in its flames." He finally turned, meeting his second's eyes. "I fear we have mistaken the nature of our opponent." The words lingered heavy before Varix laughed too loudly. "The Council sees differently. They prepare the Grand Fleet. Soon we will crush this Earth beneath the weight of our armada. Your doubts will seem like shadows cast by candlelight." Caliph did not reply, for he knew bravado when he heard it. Varix feared, though he would not name the fear. Few in the Dominion would. Pride strangled honesty. When the Council convened once more, Caliph spoke carefully, presenting losses not as excuses, but as warnings. "They fight as though each move has been rehearsed. Every loss we suffer, they exploit. They will not stop until we break, unless we change course." The chamber hissed with derision. One lord slammed a claw against the dais. "Change course? For vermin who crawl in the mud of their birth world? You shame us with such talk, Caliph." Another leaned forward, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Perhaps he admires them too much. Perhaps he has forgotten who we are. Caliph forced his voice steady. "I remember well who we are, but memory will not shield us when the knife is already at our throat." Gasped snarls, Accusations filled the chamber. Yet beneath it all he saw something else, fear hidden, unspoken. They knew, even if pride forbade them to admit it. That night he returned to his flagship weary and restless. He found himself replaying the human broadcast from Sol, the voice so calm it unsettled him more than any scream could. Withdraw. This is your last warning. The Dominion had ignored it, of course. Empires always ignored warnings. But Caliph could not. He heard inevitability in those words. He dreamed uneasily, visions of skies aflame, the Dominion's banners torn down, human eyes staring across battlefields without pity. When he woke, the ship shuddered under alarms. Reports poured in new human fleets, emerging from wormholes in precise coordination. They struck not at the heart of Dominion power, but at its arteries, cutting supply lines, severing retreat, bleeding the fleet slowly. Caliph rushed to the command deck. His crew reported chaos, but the tactical screen showed no chaos, only method. The humans advanced like surgeons, their fleets moving in ways that suggested they had predicted Dominion responses before they happened. Varix growled. They mock us with these strikes. Let us answer with a full assault. Caliph studied the display, his chest tightening. No, they are drawing us further. Do you not see? Every step they give us is a step they already own. Varix's eyes widened before narrowing again, unwilling to concede. Yet Caliph saw in him the truth. The second-in-command understood, even if he could not admit it aloud. Hours later, after the immediate crisis passed, Caliph returned once more to the human archives. He stared at the face of a soldier, dirt-smeared, teeth bared in defiance, even as fire consumed the battlefield. The soldier fell, but others rose in his place, each bearing the same unbreakable expression. Caliph whispered into the quiet, "They do not fear us. Not now. Not ever." He closed the archive, his claws digging into the console until sparks flared. The Dominion believed themselves the hunters, yet he felt with a chilling certainty that humanity had been hunting them all along. And still, despite his warnings, the Empire pressed forward. The Grand Fleet was being readied, pride their fuel, blindness their guide. Caliph felt the weight of inevitability pressing closer, heavier with every breath. The humans had given them a final warning, and the Dominion had chosen to ignore it. For the first time in his long career, Caliph wondered not whether his empire would win, but whether it could survive at all. The Dominion's Grand Fleet arrived in Sol system like a tide of black steel. Hundreds of capital ships darkened the void, their hulls bristling with weapon arrays capable of reducing continents to ash. For the first time in generations, the full strength of the Empire had gathered in one place. Caliph stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the glow of tactical projections, and felt no triumph. The silence that hung over the crew was not reverence, but dread. Earth rotated quietly below, its blue oceans gleaming, its continents alive with light. A fragile world, yet somehow every officer felt as though it stared back at them, unflinching. Caliph's second, Varix, tried to mask his unease with bravado. When the histories are written, Admiral, this will be remembered as our finest hour. Caliph's mandibles tightened. He did not reply. He had studied too much of human history to believe in glory here. He knew what waited. The order came from the Dominion Council. Advance, bombard, enslave. Pride had spoken louder than reason. Caliph relayed the command with a voice stripped of conviction. The fleet surged forward, weapons charging, their shadows blotting out the stars. For a moment, the void seemed still. Then space itself fractured. Wormholes bloomed open across the system, not chaotic, but arranged with terrifying precision. Human fleets poured through, not in disarray, but in exact formation. Drones by the tens of thousands streaked forward in coordinated swarms, their movements so synchronized they seemed like extensions of a single will. Caliph's tactical screens erupted with red alerts as Dominion squadrons were erased in the opening volleys. The humans did not waste energy on spectacle. They did not roar into comms or proclaim dominance. Their voices came once, quiet and steady. This is your last chance. Withdraw. Varix snarled. They dare speak to us as equals. He slammed his claw against the console. Order the fleet to crush them. Caliph hesitated. His instincts screamed to retreat, but duty chained his tongue. He gave the order to engage. The void lit with fury. What followed was not a battle, it was dissection. Dominion ships fired in volleys meant to overwhelm, but human fleets were never where the shots landed. Wormhole apertures opened behind Dominion formations, unleashing strikes from impossible angles. Drone clouds swarmed engines and weapon nodes, peeling capital ships apart piece by piece. Every Dominion countermeasure had already been anticipated, answered before it was even executed. Caliph gripped the railing, claws biting into the metal as he watched ships vanish one after another. It was not merely defeat unfolding, it was inevitability given form. His officers shouted, demanded retaliation patterns, but none of their tactics mattered. Humanity fought like a species that had already rehearsed this war 1,000 times in their minds. He remembered the archives he had studied, soldiers advancing through ruin, commanders sacrificing cities to win wars, civilizations burning themselves to ensure the enemy perished first. Humanity had learned long ago that survival demanded ruthless clarity. Now that clarity was turned upon the Dominion. A warning klaxon blared. A human strike group had pierced through their defenses, heading directly for Caliph's command ship. Varix bared his fangs. "They mean to take your head, Admiral. Let them come. We'll teach them the price of arrogance." Caliph turned, his voice low, steady. "No, Varix. We are the arrogant ones." The ship shuddered as impacts rippled across its shields. On the screen, human vessels moved with mathematical precision, every strike a surgical incision. Caliph watched one Dominion dreadnought collapse into fire, its debris scattering like bones into the void. For a moment, he saw not the end of a battle, but the end of an era. The bridge crew looked to him for orders. He gave none. What command could alter what was already decided? He saw it now. The Dominion was not merely losing a fleet. It was losing its illusion of permanence. Across the system, the Grand Fleet dissolved into chaos. Some captains fought to the last, others broke formation and fled. Human drones pursued with relentless efficiency, but always to disable, not annihilate. Caliph realized with a chill that this was deliberate. Humanity was not driven by bloodlust. They sought not revenge, but control. Every action whispered the same truth: we are not here to destroy you, but to replace you. When command ships' shields failed, the humans did not deliver the killing blow. Instead, their weapons fired with precision, crippling engines, disabling weapons, leaving the ship adrift. The battle around them slowed as Dominion survivors laid down arms, their surrender uncoordinated but universal. Then came the transmission. A human figure appeared on the view screen, armored but unmasked, eyes steady, voice calm. "The Dominion's time is over. We will not pursue vengeance, but we will not permit another war. Your survival depends on your willingness to yield. Choose now." The words sank into Caliph's chest heavier than any bombardment. This was not conquest as the Dominion practiced it. This was the birth of a new order. He looked across the ruined fleet, the silence of his crew, the faces of officers who had never known defeat until now. He bowed his head. "I yield." The words tasted of ash, but they were the only truth left. Varix stared at him in disbelief, his crest trembling. "You cannot." "I can," Caliph said softly, "and so will the rest. If not, there will be nothing left to save." The transmission ended. Across the fleet, the humans moved methodically, securing what remained of the Dominion ships. There was no celebration, no mocking tone, no spectacle of victory. Only silence and the quiet certainty of power shifting forever. Caliph stood on his shattered bridge, staring at Earth's blue sphere as it turned below. He thought of the archives, of soldiers standing unbroken in fire, of prisoners who had stared at him without fear. He understood now. Humanity had never been prey. They had always been waiting. In the silence that followed, Caliph felt something he had not known in centuries: humility. The heavens themselves seemed dimmer, as though burned to ash by the revelation. The Dominion was finished. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, quiet and patient, was only beginning.